Look closely at this monolithic structure standing alone in the barren wasteland, a massive, brutalist concrete boathouse built back in the 1930s. Right now, at this very second, a man can walk directly up to it, reach out his hand, and feel the rough, sun-baked walls. It stands entirely exposed, baking under the relentless and unforgiving Texas sun. Here is the terrifying truth. That man should be drowning. This structure is supposed to be buried deep under 60 feet of water. It has been completely submerged, hidden in the dark aquatic depths for 6 consecutive decades. But today, the water is entirely gone. The illusion of safety has evaporated. The water retreated, and now Lake Corpus Christi is actively vomiting up its long-lost secrets. Secrets it swallowed whole when the dams went up in 1958. As the expansive lakebed cracks and turns to blowing dust, it reveals literal ghosts of the past. Old, crumbling concrete bridges. Forgotten wagon trails from another century, the rotting foundations of a forgotten era. But do not mistake this for a fascinating piece of local history. You are looking at a graveyard, the stark, undeniable graveyard of a major American city that is dying of thirst in real time. The following numbers are not just casual statistics on the evening news. They are a literal death warrant for 500,000 people living in this region. Listen closely to the math of destruction. Lake Corpus Christi currently sits at an abysmal 9.8% capacity. Lake Choke Canyon, its much larger sister reservoir, has plummeted to an agonizing 8.2%. Combined, the entire fragile water system keeping this massive economic engine alive sits at a suffocating 8.7%. Let me repeat that, 8.7%. That is the absolute lowest level ever recorded in human history for this specific area. It has never been this dire. This is Corpus Christi, the 8th largest city in the state of Texas, and they are helplessly watching their singular lifeblood vaporize into the dry air right before their eyes. The official warning has already been issued by authorities. The terrifying reality is now inescapable. If nothing drastically changes, the city's taps could run completely dry by the year 2027. Imagine experiencing that reality. A major American metropolis, a massive industrial powerhouse, turning the faucet in the morning and getting nothing but a dry, hollow hiss of air. The doomsday countdown has already started. The desert is ruthlessly taking back its territory, and time is almost up. How did 500,000 people end up willingly stranded in a hostile, unforgiving desert environment? Because they eagerly swallowed a colossal, comforting lie. Let us rewind the clock to the year 1922. This is the exact origin point of this slow-motion, entirely preventable disaster. Early city planners looked out at the brutal, scorched, arid landscape of South Texas and made a profoundly fatal miscalculation born of pure human arrogance. They made a grand promise to the public. They promised massive, impenetrable dams. They promised sprawling artificial reservoirs, strategically choking the unpredictable Nueces and Frio rivers. They genuinely believed they had successfully outsmarted the harsh environment. They thought they had permanently hacked nature. They thought they could simply conquer the ancient desert with enough poured concrete and blind optimism. They were spectacularly, dangerously wrong. But they did not just build a sprawling, thirsty city in the dry dust. They built an untouchable, multi-billion-dollar empire. Let me show you the true staggering scale of this historic hubris. Corpus Christi is not merely a forgotten dot on the geographic map. It is the undisputed #1 crude oil export port in the entire United States of America. Look closely at these mechanical leviathans dominating the coastal skyline. Flint Hills, Valero, these are massive, relentless, sprawling refineries continuously spewing fire, toxic fumes, and thick steam into the South Texas sky. They relentlessly pump the very liquid fuel that runs the entire state economy. They feed massive international airports across the globe. They are the roaring, beating, untouchable heart of the mighty American energy sector. But a massive mechanical heart desperately needs a constant flow of blood to keep pumping, and industrial oil refineries demand water. Massive, unfathomable, mind-bending amounts of fresh, clean water. And here is where the absolute, unfiltered insanity of human greed truly shines brightest. A major metropolitan city that is literally running out of basic, essential drinking water just boldly committed 25 million gallons of it. Every single day. Let that terrifying statistic sink into your brain. 25 million gallons of water drained daily. To whom? To just one single brand new ExxonMobil plastics manufacturing plant. While regular citizens are meticulously counting the remaining drops in their kitchen sinks and letting their lawns die, the untouchable industrial titans are violently drinking the local lakes dry without a single consequence. This colossal $57 billion regional economy operates entirely on a fragile, delusional, and ultimately suicidal assumption. The blind, arrogant assumption that fresh water is an infinite, eternally renewable resource that will magically appear when demanded. That is the greatest, most destructive lie ever told in the history of Texas. They built a towering, arrogant kingdom of steel, plastic, and oil squarely on a crumbling foundation of rapidly evaporating water. They actively ignored the fundamental, unbreakable laws of geography and climate because the immediate corporate profits were simply too intoxicating to ignore. But nature does not care about your profit margins, your export quotas, or your corporate contracts. The desert is finally calling in its historical debts, and the overdue bill is going to be absolutely devastating. Stop pointing your fingers at desperate local residents. Stop blaming the exhausted, sweating homeowner simply trying to keep a small patch of front yard grass alive. The real, unstoppable enemy destroying this city is not minor human waste. It is not a slightly leaky faucet in a quiet suburban kitchen. The ultimate terrifying enemy here is a catastrophic, fundamental, fatal design flaw built directly into the core architectural blueprint of this empire. They intentionally built a massive, incredibly thirsty, water-dependent civilization in a hostile, unforgiving natural environment that actively, continuously wants it completely dead. Look very closely at the detailed topographical map of this doomed region. Look exactly at where this incredibly fragile water system actually sits. This is deep, isolated South Texas. The land here is relentlessly, endlessly flat. The climate is brutally, blisteringly hot. The atmosphere is ruthlessly, unforgivingly dry. There are absolutely no natural, deep, protective mountain gorges to physically shield these massive, shallow, artificial lakes. They are completely, helplessly exposed, wide open under an angry, burning sky. They built giant, stagnant puddles on a scorching geographic frying pan and arrogantly hoped the heat would ignore them. Let us carefully analyze the true, undisputed apex predator of this horrifying story. The silent, invisible, omnipresent killer that absolutely never, ever sleeps. Evaporation. It is not a dramatic, sudden, cinematic disaster like an earthquake. It is a slow, methodical, agonizingly persistent daily execution. Every single year, without any fail, the brutal South Texas sun violently and aggressively drinks nearly 7 vertical feet of total depth directly from these helpless reservoirs. 7 whole feet of precious, irreplaceable, life-sustaining water, stolen silently into the burning blue sky. You do not see the massive theft happening, but it is bleeding this sprawling city entirely dry. Let us aggressively throw a devastating, completely mind-numbing scientific number directly at you. A specific, undeniable data point that should instantly terrify every single elected official in this entire state. Look back closely at the historically brutal, landscape-altering mega drought of 2011. During that single, devastating 12-month period, the blazing, merciless Texas sun literally physically evaporated 5.42 million acre-feet of pure, stored reservoir water. 5.42 million. That is an astronomical, absolutely incomprehensible volume of vital liquid simply vaporizing directly into thin, scorching hot air. It vanished entirely. Gone forever. Leaving only cracked, barren mud behind. Breathe that apocalyptic statistic deep into your lungs for a second. Truly, deeply process the sheer, terrifying scale of that silent, atmospheric destruction. The blazing sun alone consumes significantly more fresh water than the total residential, indoor, and outdoor use of every single human being living in every single city, town, and sprawling suburb across the entire massive state of Texas. Combined, let that dark, heavy reality truly sink in. All the daily showers, all the green golf courses, all the running washing machines in Texas do not even begin to equal the sheer, violent thirst of the sun. The sun is the biggest, most aggressive water consumer on the completely entire planet. And you absolutely cannot build a massive concrete dam to block the sun. But wait, you might frantically, desperately scream at the screen right now. What about the heavy rain? What about the massive, unpredictable seasonal storms? Let us examine recent history. In July of 2025, Central Texas experienced catastrophic, terrifying, biblical-level flash floods. Over 100 people tragically, violently lost their lives in the rapidly rising waters. Millions upon millions of gallons of torrential rain violently dumped from the dark, heavy heavens. Local rivers rapidly overflowed their muddy banks. Entire central neighborhoods were completely submerged under raging, destructive torrents. Surely, that massive, deadly deluge saved the dying city of Corpus Christi, right? Surely, those overflowing rivers naturally rushed downstream to fill the incredibly thirsty lakes and reset the doomsday clock? No, it did absolutely nothing. Zero. Because physical geography is a cruel, heartless, mathematically precise trap. The heavy, life-saving rain unfortunately fell in the exact wrong hydrological basin. It missed the desperate, dying target completely. And even when scattered, teasing rain did manage to finally fall nearby. The parched, dead, thoroughly sun-baked earth acted exactly like a giant, intensely dehydrated sponge. The deeply cracked, ruined dirt aggressively and selfishly absorbed every single drop of surface moisture before the water could ever gather momentum, flow together, and travel downstream into the vast, horribly empty reservoirs. The sky above is fundamentally broken. The damaged earth below is simply too thirsty to share. There is absolutely no magical miracle coming from the clouds. Nature is undeniably, brutally cruel. We have established that fact. But nature is simply doing its blind, biological job. Human incompetence, however, is a very specific, highly deliberate kind of lethal. And this is exactly where our story violently pivots from a tragic natural disaster into an infuriating, man-made horror film. Since the year 2019, the city actually had a brilliant, completely flawless plan. A bulletproof, permanently drought-proof solution to physically save everyone. A massive seawater desalination plant. They literally sit right on the edge of the Gulf of Mexico. The vast ocean is right there. Ocean water is infinite. Problem permanently solved. Right? Wrong. Absolutely, tragically wrong. Enter the suffocating red tape. Enter the deliberately slow, rotting government bureaucracy. Enter pure, unfiltered, disgusting corporate greed. Over just a few short years, the original, highly manageable price tag of this incredibly vital survival project completely mutated. It rapidly ballooned totally out of control. $140 million grotesquely warped into an astonishing, unforgivable $1.2 billion. An incomprehensible eightfold massive increase. They selfishly debated, they intentionally stalled. They formed endless, completely useless political committees. They aggressively bickered over minor environmental permits and massive industrial kickbacks, while the essential lakes visibly evaporated into dust right behind their backs. So, what did the brilliant, legally elected leadership finally do when directly faced with this apocalyptic existential crisis? In September of 2025, the local city council took a formal, heavily documented public vote. They actively, intentionally, and legally voted to brutally kill the desalination project. They looked directly into the eyes of a rapidly dying city, stared right at the horrific, undeniable water data, and consciously chose to save immediate cash. They literally stated on the official public record that they chose to hope for rain instead of financially investing in their own guaranteed survival. That was not a simple political vote. That was a signed, officially sealed death sentence for 500,000 unaware citizens. So, with the absolute permanent solution officially dead in the dirt, what exactly is keeping 500,000 thirsty people physically alive right now at this exact passing second? One single, incredibly fragile, terrifyingly vulnerable thread. It is called the Mary Roads Pipeline. A narrow, desperately dark, 101-mile-long concrete tube, frantically sucking muddy water from a distant reservoir called Lake Texana. This single, solitary aging pipe currently supplies a staggering 65% of the entire sprawling city's water. It is the absolute last remaining rotting lifeboat for a rapidly sinking Titanic. But here is the radically new, deeply terrifying, fatal flaw that absolutely nobody wants to loudly discuss in public. This massive, sprawling pipeline was originally strategically designed and built to be a temporary, helpful backup, a simple contingency plan, a minor emergency reserve. Now, it is violently running at absolute maximum, screaming capacity as the one primary lifeline. The heavy, relentless, unforgiving pressure is rapidly destroying it completely from the inside out. The physical infrastructure is literally failing under the extreme unintended stress. It has already violently ruptured 33 separate, highly dangerous times. 33 critical, deep cracks in the dying city's only remaining armor. And the ultimate, absolute, worst-case apocalyptic nightmare scenario is quietly, invisibly unfolding right now at the direct other end of that very overstressed pipe. Lake Texana, the supposed mighty savior, is also rapidly, visibly dying. The critical water level there just violently plummeted down to an alarming 55.9%. If that exhausted, overpressurized pipeline suddenly dramatically snaps in half somewhere in the deserted Texas brush, or if Lake Texana drops terribly below the critical intake valves before any slow, delayed emergency backup projects are miraculously finished, the city instantly dies. No final warning, no secondary backup. Total, immediate, unmitigated, regional catastrophe. Let the frantic, panicked, ticking clock permanently stop. Listen closely to the haunting, suffocating silence of a sprawling city taking its final, agonizing breaths. James Dodson, the increasingly desperate former water director, intimately familiar with this exact collapsing system, recently stated the terrifying, undeniable truth on the official public record. Quote, "People would be absolutely crazy not to actively panic right now." End quote. Do not foolishly assume this is merely an isolated, tragic local disaster happening to an unfortunate population somewhere else. This is a massive, incredibly destructive global domino patiently waiting to forcefully fall. If these violently drying taps critically fail by May 2026, the region instantly hits a catastrophic level 1 emergency. Essential industrial water gets violently, legally severed. Those massive, untouchable oil refineries we saw earlier, they are completely forced to instantly shut down daily operations. The critical, multi-billion-dollar national crude supply chain violently chokes. Global gasoline prices will immediately, uncontrollably explode worldwide. Ruthless Wall Street already smells the imminent, unavoidable death. Moody's aggressively downgraded the sinking city's fragile financial credit rating. A staggering $2 billion of municipal debt is now flashing violently red across global trading screens. Right now, panicked local officials are frantically, desperately scrambling in the dark. They are blindly throwing $400 million at temporary, emergency brackish water wells just to barely survive the coming year. But the crucial legal permits? They are hopelessly, fatally stuck inside a rotting, paralyzed state court system. Mindless bureaucratic paperwork is literally stalling actual human physical survival. They are frantically trying to hammer together a tiny wooden fire escape, while the entire massive concrete foundation of the house is already turning into blowing, useless ash. Back in the highly optimistic 1950s, Texas genuinely thought they had permanently beaten the ancient desert by utilizing massive poured concrete and sheer, blinding human arrogance. But here in the 2020s, the merciless desert is finally taking absolutely everything back, and it is relentlessly charging a catastrophic, deadly interest rate. Tomorrow morning, 500,000 completely exhausted people living in South Texas will inevitably wake up. They will slowly walk into their quiet, shadowed kitchens. They will blindly turn the metal tap, and they will desperately, hopelessly pray that the arrogant mathematical equations conceived in the 1920s still somehow miraculously work. But deep down below, deep under the violently cracked, bone-dry, echoing lake beds, the forgotten ghosts of the past are loudly, mercilessly laughing at them. Time is officially up.